When you first start Throne and Liberty, there are going to be a bunch of things that you need to learn early into the game, or else you could end up making mistakes that cost you in the long run. So in order to avoid this, here's a list of noob traps to avoid when you are first learning the game. Starting off, when you get to level 15 or 20 or so in the main quest, you're going to find this contract manager here at Starlight Observatory. And part of the main story quest is going to force you to take 4 different contracts. And so when you do this, you only want to take the absolute minimum number of contracts that you need for the main quest. Don't keep rotating through these contracts. Don't spend any more than you need to. You're going to want to save those contract rights later on until you get to level 49 or 50, and then you can spend them in one of the end game zones, which are Watcher's Post, Pure Light Tower, or Kanina Village. Usually I like going to either Watcher's Post or Pure Light Tower. I really like taking the contracts in Ruins of Tournai or Shattered Temple, but any of the end-game zones are going to work here, and you can find which one works best for you. That's going to lead us into our next tip here, which is when you are taking these end-game contracts, there are certain ones that you want to prioritize and certain ones that you typically want to skip. So the ones that you want to prioritize are going to have these rubrics ores here. These are the red ones, and Marand ores, which look blue. So this would be a Marand ore right here. If you do not see a red ore or a blue ore, the next best thing to take is the yellow Stalin ore or the green Emerald ore. So the way this works is red is weapon growth stones, yellow is for armor growth stones, green is for accessory growth stones, and blue is for skill books. You're going to be bottlenecked the most probably on skill books early on, and plus later in the game these are going to be very useful for something called substance transformation. We may not get that for a while, but I think it's still worthwhile to stockpile these in the meantime. So focus on red and blue, and then if you don't see red and blue, focus on yellow or green. Now, every once in a while, you'll also see a little purple loot bag. I didn't get one here, but it'll be very obvious. It's always this last reward in the list of contracts that changes. So just look for a little purple bag. If you see one of those, you're going to want to take that as well. Generally, you never take these material selection chests. If you need these kinds of materials, you can get them from Amatoy Expeditions, which we'll talk about in a different guide, but you don't need to take those here. Same thing with polished crystals and parchments. If you have a very specific need for these at a particular moment in time, then maybe every once in a while you can take these just to get that specific thing that you're trying to upgrade done. But generally, there are other ways to get these materials, and instead you should really use your contracts to focus on those purple bags and to focus on your growth stone materials. You'll notice here that it says you can refresh the list after you sign one or more contracts above. This goes as many times as you want, so don't be afraid to accept a single contract if that's all that you see, and then refresh, and you can accept one more and then refresh again if you would like to. One of the first things the game teaches you in the tutorial is this perfect block mechanic, where if you use your character's defensive ability right when this purple circle gets to its smallest point, you will mitigate all damage and trigger a special attack associated with your weapon. However, one thing that a lot of people are not realizing is that this actually works in PvP as well. Any skill that is labeled with a Fury attack can be blocked with this perfect block ability, and most of the initiatory crowd control kind of catch skills that people use in PvP are going to be labeled as Fury attacks. The reason people do not realize this is because there is no big obvious purple circle that happens when you're fighting someone. However, if you are in a really big fight and you see this message pop up that says that you are being targeted by another player and you choose to block at that moment, even if you don't really realize what's going on, you will be surprised by how many times you get a defense or a full-on perfect block. You can also do a roll dodge, which will probably happen anyway since you're likely to be moving around in these large fighting scenarios, and that will, of course, engage the rolling part of your block attack. You can check your skill message if you want to see what the difference is between your stationary block and your rolling block. And this right here also segues nicely into the sponsor of today's video, which is Exit Lag. Because when it comes to landing these perfect blocks in both PvE or PvP, whether it comes to these large fights or arena, you need every little advantage that you can get in terms of shaving off that ping. I mean, you can see here in this video how crazy some of the larger fights in Throne get. When there's 500 or some insane number of people on the screen around you using these abilities, obviously you are going to need any advantage that you have to optimize your internet connection. Exit lag is a tunneling service that will help reduce lag, and the further away that you are from the game servers, the more of a benefit you're going to get. You don't want to rely on just the regular route that your ISP uses to get you to the game. Maybe that'll be good, maybe it won't, maybe on one day it works, maybe on another day it's very laggy. Have a consistent, reliable shedding of ping with exit lag. This is a product that I have used for years, regardless of whether or not they sponsor me. I've used this for Albion, Black Desert, New World. It makes a significant difference in every game that I use it in. And you don't have to take my word for it. Click the link in the description and you can try exit lag for free for 3 days, do a side-by-side comparison, and see the results for yourself. All right, now let's talk about some mistakes that we can make when progressing our gear. So if we open up the equipment enchanting window here and then go to the second tab, transfer, this is used to transfer the equipment from one, or the progression from one item to the next. So I can transfer a green item into another green item, or I can transfer a green item up into the next tier of blue, or I could transfer blue into the next tier of purple. So the mistake that we want to avoid making here is do not ever transfer an item that isn't maxed out. So for green, a max green would be +6. Don't transfer a +3 green, don't transfer a +5 green. Wait until that green is maxed out at +6 before you send it over to a blue. If you're just going green to green, this doesn't matter. But when you're going to the next tier, when you're going green to blue, make sure that green is maxed out. You will only be able to transfer into that blue item one time. So that means you need to get the absolute most out of that transfer that you can, because the transferring XP is going to be a lot more efficient than the XP that you would get just from upgrading without that transfer. So this is especially important when transferring from blue to purple. Green doesn't give a lot of XP, so it's not a huge deal if you've messed this up really early on, but absolutely make sure that you get your blue gear to +9. So the max for green is 6, the max for blue is +9. Absolutely do not transfer any blue pieces that are not +9. On a similar note, when it comes to transferring, this is probably going to be the most complicated tip here, so you might have to pay a little bit more attention to this one. But when it comes to going from green to blue, this isn't super important, but it's very important when going from blue to purple. If you transfer a +9 blue item to a purple item, and that purple item is level 0, it's going to go from level 0 to level 6. However, you don't have to do it at level 0. You can upgrade that purple item to level 1, to level 2, to level 3. You can put a bunch of experience into it and then transfer the blue item. You're going to get less levels from doing that, but you're going to get a lot more mileage for your growth stones. So this is a little bit tricky, but what you want to aim for, the sweet spot here, is get your purple gear to level 7 and about 30%. So whenever you upgrade an item, you'll get little percentages that progress here. You want to get that thing all the way to level 70 and then have this number here be around 30%. Did I say 70? Level 7 and then around 30%. The reason for that is because once you get that purple item to level 7 and 30%, you can then transfer a +9 blue and it will max this item out. So let's compare the two. If you transfer a max blue into a level 0 purple, it goes from 0 to 6. If you transfer a max blue into a 7.3 purple, it goes from 7.3 to 9. Now you're thinking, okay, the first one I get 6 levels, the second one I get 1.7 levels. 6 sounds like a lot more, but it is actually not. And there are 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that the number of growth stones that you spend per click is going to go up each level. So this costs 1 stone now, but next level it's going to cost 2 stones. After that it's going to cost 3 stones and then 4 stones and so on. Those final clicks that you're doing on the last few levels are costing 7, 8 stones a piece. Reason number 2, the actual progress that you make around this circle towards the next level also goes down with each level. So getting a common or a special, or whatever you happen to land on when you're rolling the dice here, upgrading your gear, that progress is going to be significantly smaller at those final levels 7 and 8 than it is at levels 1, 2, and 3. You can fly through the first 6 levels pretty easily, and you'll notice this when upgrading your gear. It's really the last couple of levels that take the majority of your materials. And so if you can, save those +9 blues until your purple gear is 7.3 and then transfer in. This is going to end up saving you a lot more materials than you think. Now, one other noob trap when it comes to transferring, and this one is also a big one, don't be in too big of a hurry to go from green to blue or from blue to purple until you feel confident that you can trait the next tier of items. So in most cases, a fully traded green item is going to be a lot stronger than a blue item out the gate that just has that initial trait that hasn't been improved a lot yet. Once you know the game a little bit more, you can kind of compare stats and see like, okay, is this worth going to? But I'm telling you, 90% of the time, it's not going to be worth going from green to blue until I actually have the means to trait out that blue item. And that could be that I have enough lucent to buy the traits off the market, or that could be I know where that blue item drops and I have enough tokens to go and farm that place, or I have time to go do that open world ground. Whatever it is that is going to allow me to get the traits on that blue item, once I feel confident that I have access to that, that's usually when I should transfer over to the blue. This is far more important when going from blue to purple. Most of us are going to be using fully traded blue items for the majority of our time in T1, and then we're going to be switching over to purple items later in the content phase once we're a lot more established, have a lot more gear, a lot more wealth to throw around. You There's a lot more space for traits on these blue items than there is on greens. And so a fully traded blue item is extremely powerful. The jump from blue to purple is not so large that you want to just cast away. If I had this Hexweaver hat fully decked out, that means I'd have 3 different traits and each of those traits would be leveled up to the 3rd bar there. That's an enormous amount of power for my character. And, some traits such as, weapon traits or accessory traits in particular, when it comes to things like skill damage boost or skill damage resistance, a lot of those traits are a lot more important than the rarity of the item or the stats that just come on the item implicitly. So don't be in a huge hurry to transfer to the next tier of gear until you are confident that you can trait that tier of gear. The main exception to this is weapons. If you can get a purple weapon, even if it has a bad trait like mine does here, max mana, which doesn't fit my build at all, the raw damage that I get from this is a lot more important generally than the traits that I could have on the blue version. So if you can get the next tier of weapon early on, I would go ahead and rush that regardless of what traits you can get. But when it comes to the rest of your gear, just slow down. If you need to fully max out your greens and chill with green for a while, that's totally fine. And then after that, if you need to max out your blues and chill with blue for a while, that's what the majority of people are going to be doing. You won't be able to fully trade out your purples for quite a while unless you are a big swiper. So just keep that in mind. Now, in Chapter 4 of the main story quest, you're going to unlock these pink tokens up in the top right called Dimensional Contract Tokens, and you're going to get an appendix mission to run Spectre's Abyss, which is the level 20 co-op dungeon. That's totally fine. You can go ahead and run the dungeon, but do not open the chest at the very end. If you open the chest, you will spend these dimensional contract tokens. So you can run co-op dungeons as much as you want, and no tokens will get spent. The tokens get spent at the end only if you open the chest. You can save your tokens by simply not opening that chest, and then you can run these as many times as you want for the codex or the appendants or whatever side missions you have. But do not spend your tokens, meaning do not open that chest in the level 20, 30, or 40 dungeons. You only want to open those chests in the level 50 dungeons. This is where all the good stuff is. Every build in the game, no matter what you're playing, you are going to have at least a few of your pieces, at least a few of your key important pieces are going to be from these level 50 dungeons. So pay attention to the loot here and make sure you are only opening chests that have stuff that is important. This is another really big one. Do not spend your trait stones until you have a pretty good grasp on the markets and the value of different traits. So there's 3 of these. There's trait unlock stones, conversion stones, and extraction stones. These are going to be used to selectively unlock a trait on a purple item. Usually you do this because the purple item that you're after is prohibitively expensive. So this is going to happen a lot with like items that only drop from field bosses. It's going to be really hard to get duplicates of those. They're going to be very expensive on the market. And so you may want to use your trait unlock stones there. But even then, don't do it early on if you, until you understand the real value of those items and those traits. These unlock stones are very hard to come by, and you might get some early from the battle pass or something, and you might think, oh, these aren't that hard to get. Trust me, they are hard to get. You absolutely want to save these until you firmly understand the value of the trait that you're unlocking and the trait market overall. Now, same thing with these other stones. Trait conversion stones can be used to reroll a trait that you already have. There's a couple times where you might want to do this fairly early on. A good example of this is going to be the Violent Signet. This is by far the most expensive blue ring in the game. And so that means the traits for this are going to be very pricey. I got lucky with mine and it got skill damage boost right off the bat. But if you get a Violent Signet when you're running dungeons and it drops like Bind Chance, you're probably going to want to re-roll that and hope for max health, skill damage boost, or buff duration. This is really only worth doing when you have one trait unlocked. By the time you have multiple traits unlocked, then your odds of getting something good are going to be reduced unless you have multiple bad traits unlocked for some reason, which you shouldn't. And so just be aware for something like Violent Signet, if you get a bad trait, then it could be worth re-rolling it. But for other pieces that are dropping more commonly, for example, like these Hexweaver pants, these are dropping a lot right now in Ant Nest, so a lot of people are grinding these. I can probably just wait a bit and the price of traits for these pants is going to go down, and I can just buy them off the auction house using Lucent. And so in that case, I would want to save my conversion stones for another piece that's going to be a lot more expensive. My purple weapon as well, this is another good example. I got max mana on my Great Blade, which is not a trait that I want to use. So I would want to save my trait conversion stones for something like this, where the market for the traits on this item is going to be very expensive. The last of the three here, the trait extraction stones, these are used by clicking this trait extraction button in your inventory, and then I can select any piece of gear and I can pull the trait out of that item and list it on the market. This will destroy the item and turn it into this extract. So I can mouse over here and get an idea of what this exact extract for this exact piece is going to cost. However, this doesn't tell me the full story. Oftentimes, I'm going to want to check the market for other purple chest pieces that have this trait as well, since people will want this one to unlock a trait on Heroic Armor of Resistance, but if they just want to level up a trait for Heroic Armor of Resistance, they can use any purple chest piece. So unlock has to be the exact piece. Level up can be any piece of the same slot and rarity. Now, normally what you do here is you have kind of an idea of a ratio of how much Lucent per trait extraction stone. So right now, I know that I can make about, say, 10 or 20 Lucent per extraction stone. So let's go with 10 for now just to keep it simple. That means that if I cannot sell this item for at least 250 Lucent, it is not worth me extracting. And that 250 number comes from the fact that it takes 25 stones to extract. So this needs to be worth 10 times 25, or in this case, 250. Now when it comes to a blue item, blue items are only 5 to extract, and green items are only 1 to extract. So as long as I can sell that green trait for 10 Lucent, which is the bare minimum on the auction house, then I will extract it. As long as I can sell a blue trait for 50 Lucent, then I will extract it. As long as I can sell a purple trait for 250 Lucent, then I will extract it. Now, don't take that 10 number as gospel. You might have to change that depending on the market, depending how long the game's been out. Certainly, as the life cycle of the game extends, a lot of these items are going to get flooded. A lot of the value of these things is going to go down. Also, you might be in a scenario where you are just about out of trait extraction stones. So I'm getting pretty low here. I'm down to 32. If I'm down to my last few extraction stones, and it's going to be a while until I can get more, then I might raise that ratio temporarily. I might want to only sell things where I can get, 30 lucent per stone or 40 lucent per stone, just because I'm running out. So there's really no magic number I can give you here, but it's just one of those things where it is a scarce resource. Understand where you're getting these from, understand how limited these are, and understand the market before you spend these. All right, so this next one's a little goofy. Often, when you are grinding in the same area for an extended period of time, this happens a lot when you're doing abyssal dungeons where you're spending these abyssal contract tokens. If you're in the same area for an extended period of time, you're going to find yourself with a lot of duplicate drops. You're going to find yourself with a lot of the same pair of boots, the same helmet, or whatever. And a lot of these items are going to have junk traits that won't sell. So obviously the items that have good traits, if you have the stones to extract those, you want to extract and sell them. But other pieces are just going to be junk. They're not going to be worth selling on the market. And so you are going to want to dissolve them. And when I click this dissolve button and put this pair of boots in here, it's worth 10 quality magic powder. But when I put this pair of boots in, it's worth 35. Okay, so why is that? That's because I slammed one of the traits from a pair of boots into this pair of boots so that it now has two. So because these are duplicate pieces, it's very easy to mash them together. So I can do it again with this piece just to show you how this works. Every piece of gear is going to start with one trait, but if it's a duplicate item, I can use that duplicate to unlock the second trait. And when I unlock this second trait, I'm getting an additional 25 powder. Now remember, if I salvage these separately, they're worth 10. Now if I add it together to this one, this extra piece is worth 25. So I've gained 15 powder that I wouldn't otherwise have gotten if I did this separately. This is especially useful on blue items because I can slam all sorts of pieces here. I can level this up 3 times. I can unlock this and level it up 3 times. I can unlock the last one and level it up 3 times. So it's not always worth the kind of like headache and inventory management to completely fill out every item, but just be aware when you're cleaning out your inventory, if you have a bunch of the same item, take a second and just slam all the junk traits together into one before you dissolve, because you will end up getting a lot more powder that way. Another way to use your extra/junk items is the Lithograph book here. This is kind of a one and done. You fill this book out, you get the rewards, and then that objective is complete and you can't do it anymore. Just a couple things to be aware of here. It's very easy to accidentally add items here that have traits that are actually valuable. So just double check before you put an item here. Instead of just slamming these add buttons, click the item itself and then click this add button, and then you can see what the trait is. And if it ends up being something valuable, you can swap it out. So for example, if I click these boots here and then I go to add, it says magic evasion. The magic evasion trait on these boots is probably selling pretty well at the moment. That's a popular trait. So if I want, I can click alternate item and I can swap it out to something else. If you don't have anything to swap it out to, that's fine. Just wait until you get something that's kind of junk that you want to get rid of. Always keep your valuable items that have traits, always keep those for the market or for upgrading your own gear. Only put things in this book that you're just going to dissolve anyways, and just make sure you're clicking this add button and checking which of those you're actually putting in, so that you don't accidentally salvage something that has a good trait. This also goes with leveled up items as well. If you it'll give you a warning, but it's still good to just double check and make sure that that item's not leveled up. Just make sure that it actually is the one that you are trying to get rid of, rather than just slamming this button and accidentally putting the wrong thing. Our final noob trap here has to do with the ornate coins that you can spend in the shop. So these have nothing to do with the cash shop, even though they're in the same place. If you open the shop and scroll down, you'll find this ornate coin section. You can get these a few ways, but the main way you're going to get them is by interacting with those purple glowing pages that you see throughout the game as you're leveling and exploring. So if you notice one of those, always try to go over and interact with it, because it will give you coins that you can spend in this section. The noob trap here is to avoid buying the blue versions of these books and growth stones. And the reason for that is because even if you don't have purple gear yet, even if you actually do need blue stones or blue books, it's much more efficient to buy the purple one and dissolve it. 1 purple is 5 blues. So they really shouldn't be charging 5 coins for the blues. They should be charging 2 coins for the blues. So it's going to be much more efficient for you to buy the purple and dissolve it down. There's some other really good stuff that you can buy here: extraction stones and gamble pouches and, the the toys if you decide to save up. So you don't necessarily, I'm not automatically saying that these are even the best thing to buy with your Ornate coins. There's other stuff that you may choose to prioritize instead. However, a lot of people are buying these, especially the skill books, to get that advantage early on. Just make sure if you're going to buy these that you buy the purple ones and dissolve them. Don't waste your coins on the blue ones that are, 2.5 times less efficient. That's going to wrap it up. If you guys found this content helpful, don't forget to subscribe. I will be posting guides for Throne regularly going from here on out. You can also find the link to my Twitch stream and my Discord in the description. The stream also gets re-streamed to YouTube, so feel free to stop by either platform and ask questions. And whenever I'm live, I will be there paying attention to both chats. We'll be having conversations about the game in Discord. There's also some pinned information in there as well if you want to check that out. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.